Hi, Jewel.
Hello, Sarita. How are you today?
Very well. You?
Good, thank you.
I
Good,
think
thank
we're
you.
going to tackle this subject of fear response today, aren't we? I think that's what we sort of came up with, and it's a biggie because I don't know anyone who's really unfamiliar with the idea that we have a fear response.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a universal experience. We all experience that in various ways, and there's different levels to the fear response as well. So, yeah, let's get into it and see where it takes us.
Well, a lot of us, and this is my observation both with myself and my clients, is that we're very identified with that fear part of us. What do I mean by that? I mean that really all our responses, a lot of our responses are fear-based, and we kind of have built our personality around that a little bit, or our understanding of our personality.
Mhm.
And I find that concept quite interesting because is that really who we are? Or is
Mm,
there more to us than that? And I just
exactly.
think, oh, wow, that's such an interesting subject. Because, firstly, it's, well, if I'm not just my fear response, who am I?
Mm.
But even before that, it's like, well, what part of me is the fear response? What do I notice I am in that, if that
Mm.
makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And like we're touching on identity work there as well, is because we do become so identified with certain parts of ourselves or certain behaviors, responses, and we really deeply integrate them as like, I am. It's always the I am statements. I am scared of, or I am anxious. I am a bad driver. It could be anything. Like we really do internalize those things.
Mm,
But that takes us out of the possibility or the openness that everything's fluid and can be changed or at least looked at to see if it needs to be. And does it help us now? Maybe it used to be helpful, but is that fear response now in this present day a helpful thing? Are we still in
mm,
danger or are we not?
mm. Yes, that's a really good point because there are real dangers. Depending where you live in the world, there are real dangers,
Absolutely. Yeah.
um, and then there's the dangers of an idea of what the future might hold, which is dangerous.
Mm.
So it's like there can be dangers now, or there can be dangers that we perceive could be if we don't do certain things.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, I think the whole world's full of that right now as well. But absolutely, what you said, like if you are in danger, if you're in a country that a war-torn country or your family's being persecuted, then there is a real fear that is an absolutely true and needed response that your body's going through. It's a true response to what's actually happening, which is different from a fear response that is from a core kind of traumatic event or something that happened earlier in life that is no longer helpful because you're not in danger anymore. So those are it's very, very interesting is to identify. And that's why it can be a bit gaslighty and a bit kind of like bypassing to go to like a medical thing and then they just try and squash the fear down. If there's a true fear, then there's a true fear. And I think it's important to acknowledge the fear or the danger that like you are experiencing if that's true
Mm,
for you and that's a present day danger.
mm, mm. And I think fears grow when they're unacknowledged too, you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely. Yeah,
Sometimes
absolutely.
naming it, sometimes being very clear about what the fear is, or having support to understand that, or having others validate that
Mm.
that's a reasonable thing, or even if it's not reasonable, that it exists,
Hmm. Yes, that's the
is
big one, isn't it? That it even exists because how many times, and I'm talking broadly because there's many situations that this would fit, are we told that that's not true? That doesn't
yeah,
exist,
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, that's a big one.
yeah. It is
But
a
not,
big one.
yeah, I was going to say, but back to your comment is, yeah, it's absolutely agree. It's like not being left alone in the fear. There might not be anything to do to change the danger. It could be a really true and unchangeable thing right now. But being alone in the fear and being supported genuinely and authentically and understood within the fear are two very, very different experiences and can have a very different effect on our own, physical body and mental health as well.
what I notice with myself and clients is that we have this um, interesting response to our fears. We kind of internally, if we can't really see that there is an imminent fear, but we still feel fearful, we
Mm,
make ourselves wrong for having the fear.
mm,
We'll kind of give ourselves judge ourselves.
mm.
Why are you, what are you worried about? There's nothing here to be worrying about. What's wrong with you? Or
Yeah.
stuff like that. And so, sometimes it's quite revelatory to have someone say to you, well, think about it for a minute. XYZ has happened in the past, blah, blah, blah. This is doing this at the moment. Have a look at that. What's going on there? You have every reason to feel this way right
Mm,
now.
yeah.
And this is such a huge relief when someone can actually receive that validation that they're not, you know, deeply flawed for having this experience, that
Mm,
there's actually reasons for it. And then once we can see the reasons for it, if there's nothing to be done, there's nothing to be done. That's one road. But if there is something to look at there with regard to the past or something that we can change, to explore all of those things firstly without just immediately thinking there's something wrong with me
mm. And
is really important, I
it's
think.
so important. And that's what I really, really reject I really reject this notion of you're broken. There's something
Mm,
inherently wrong with you. You are a flaw. You've
mm,
got a flaw, or that's just who you are. That's your
mm,
personality, or that because everything is fluid and everything is changeable. And that's why I really reject kind of like the mainstream kind of therapeutic terms, the labels. Because whenever you tell someone you are this and then they
mm,
internalize it, then
mm,
it does become a little bit of an identity, well, not
mm,
a little bit, a lot of an identity thing. So I yeah, if someone the worst thing to tell anybody is, oh, don't be so silly, or oh,
mm.
that's just who you are, or, like all these blanket kind of extreme statements. It's so different for someone to hear like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. But does it help you? Does it help you
Yes.
now? And do you want to change it instead of, some people are happy to live how they live.
Yeah.
Some people want to change things, and you can. Everything is fluid within the psyche. Everything
Yeah.
can be worked on.
And the first step is to understand the landscape we're in,
Mm,
whether it be from a psychological point of view or actually in our physical reality.
yes.
To be objectively able to really assess our landscape, our experience landscape. And then we're in a better position to be able to understand what fear is, you know, something we can't do anything about and that we have to
Mhm.
manage in a certain way, or what fear is something we can do something about, whether it's from
Mm.
the past or whether it's something we can make a different decision about. It's all about this understanding, I think,
It
to
is.
get to that point
Yeah, the
clearly.
understanding, because it's
Mm,
often more, we're talking in like simple terms of like fear, one single fear, but we're complicated as humans. We could have dozens of fears at any one time, and that all clumps together into, oh, I am so scared, I am so overwhelmed. But when you start to unpick it, like you say, when you start to understand it, it does become like a lighter burden, because there could be genuine fears about the state of the world that we're all living in, example, but there could be other ones layered on top of it, and when you reduce them, it kind of reduces, it doesn't make the other fear disappear, but it makes it easier to carry and easier to acknowledge, so it gives you more clarity. So yeah, I like what you said with like just the naming of it and the untangling of it. I think that's really
mm.
important, because it's always more complicated. I think I say that a lot, but it is. We've
Yeah,
probably
it
got
is
4 or 5 years.
complex. Yeah, it's pretty
Complex. Yeah.
complex. But what I'm aware of also is that something we know from neuroscience is that when we're in a fear place, we actually have less access to all our mental faculties. You know, we know in real time now they're watching brains working and they're watching where the energy's flowing, where what's being lit up neurologically in different circumstances. And overall, I mean, it's a pretty heavy duty subject, and I don't want to sort of reduce it too much down, but fundamentally what they're often looking at is when the fear response is kind of activated, which a lot of us have it activated a lot of the time, whether we're in traffic in the city or whatever we're doing. This draws energy away from the frontal part of our brain, the logical part, the problem solving part, the creative part.
And the
All
social
of that,
part.
and the social part, exactly. So we're actually hamstrung physically
Hmm.
from a brainwave or brain neurology point of view,
Hmm. Yeah.
through no fault of our own. We're just wired that way to send lots more resources for obvious reasons, to our fear response when it's perceived we need it. So,
Yeah.
to beat ourselves up for an actual physical response to a
Mm.
stimulus
Yeah.
that's actually happening, or what we're perceiving is happening,
Yeah.
is kind of a bit ludicrous, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's what it is, ludicrous. And that's where some of the, there's many frameworks that can explain that process. And sometimes it's
Mm,
helpful to put language onto it or some kind of visual, like there's diagrams, I'm immediately thinking of polyvagal theory with the window of tolerance, which the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, or the
mm.
shutdown kind of phases. It's sometimes helpful for people to understand and visualize those different stages and identify what to do in the opposite way to get out of that and back into another one. Because there's often things. So if we're talking about like how do we get out of a fear response, assuming that the fear isn't real, because we don't want to take ourselves out of a fear response if the fear is actually happening right in front of you, because that fear is going to get you out of the situation. Like if there's a building on fire, you don't want to start trying to get into your window of tolerance. You want to be running out of the building so it's working in a perfect way. But if you do want to get out of a certain response, an activated state, then you do the opposite of what it's doing, of what it's doing. So if you want to not fight or not run, then you're very kind of like, you've got a lot of energy build up at that point, and it's making your whole body want to run. So you have to do kind of like the opposite thing to get back out of it, usually.
And this is such a wonderful, I'm so passionate about this subject, having a background in meditation and being a meditation teacher. And now also focusing a lot on how we as humans inhabit ourselves generally. A lot of us are just really up in our heads, not down in our bodies. And this makes it very interesting in terms of the fear response, because essentially, if we can get ourselves down into our bodies more, we're going to be more, what's the word I'm looking for? We're going to be more holistically experiencing ourselves.
Mm.
And therefore, it stands to reason that we're going to have access to more information in the moment, because sometimes we're not even aware that we're in the fear response.
Mm.
And until it becomes so strong, like with anxiety attacks, or some people call them panic attacks. I prefer to say anxiety attack. Well, I actually don't like the word attack, but
Yeah,
you
I
know,
know what
for
you mean.
everyone knows what a
Yeah.
panic attack sort of sounds like. So,
Mm.
this is why you'll find people suddenly going through these situations in their life where they're having these panic attacks. Their heart rate goes up. They can't breathe. They can't do anything. They break into a cold sweat and they're wondering what's wrong with them physically. And it's
Mhm.
just been this build up over time where
Mm.
this fear response has been left unchecked. And it's starting to ramp itself up to such a degree that it's really trying to get your attention.
Yeah.
And so
Oh,
it's going harder and harder and harder and notice me, notice me, notice me type of thing.
that's right. Yeah.
And that's the first indication that some people get that there's something wrong, actually.
Yeah, they often think they're having a heart attack at that point, and and it astounds me that even the medical team sometimes don't understand how to deal with a panic attack. You know,
Hmm.
I guess it's
Yeah.
a different way of responding to it. But yeah, it does,
Yeah.
like you say, it builds up so much that it becomes a full physical response instead of just a internal or mental response.
Yeah. So we're kind of taking the road that I would say is this holistic approach to ourselves, in terms of who are we? How do we operate? We need this information. We
Mm,
need the information. And that helps us be with our experience more because it's not about being flawed, as you say. It's not about there's something wrong with us. It's, well, how am I operating and what in my world is causing me to operate this way, both internally and externally?
yeah. Yeah, and learning the tools to be able to do that in your daily life and not waiting for it to build up so much that it's a crisis moment or a big physical moment, because it's management, isn't it? If like you're able to do these little daily check-ins or whatever weekly check-ins with your own self, it really kind of like manages it so it's not going into these deep waves of like massive kind of responses, panic attacks or overwhelm, or that could come out in many different ways. So yeah,
Mm,
the daily kind of management or regular, I'll say regular rather than daily
yeah.
because I don't want to put pressure on anyone that they have to sit down and do things daily, but a regular check-in system with fear or with any of the other parts in the system that are creating a response or a
Mm.
feeling or a behavior.
It's interesting. Today, even in the pool while I was doing my laps, I was aware that I have to reframe myself to myself.
Mhm. And how do
What do
you
I mean by that?
how do you do that?
I was aware that I was still identifying myself as separate to my body.
Ah, okay.
And that was very interesting because I was still like, had this master slave relationship with my body. Like, what occurred to me was that I was always looking for something wrong in my body.
Ah, okay.
What's wrong? Is there something wrong there? Oh, that's not right. I've got to fix that, or I've got to do this. And I, and I do tend to spend as much time as I can in my body. But I was also still aware of all my conditioning since I was very young, because our society does actively disengage us. Not through, no one's tried to do this on purpose. It's just society in general. From when we're kids, we're told to sit at the desk at school. And well, I think they do things differently now. When I went to school,
Oh,
it
it's kind of
was
the same, to be fair.
sit down, don't run around. And so what is the messaging with all of that? And that is that just ignore what your body wants to do. Don't
Yeah.
do what your body wants to do. Your body is not as important as you know, thinking. There
Mm,
was these subtle messages that I was always getting. And so now the invitation for me, I guess, is to go, actually, what does it mean for me to be me?
mhm. And to have physical needs and as well as, other needs.
And where do
Yeah.
I get my information from about
Yeah.
me? Not
Hmm.
always just from my head.
Hmm.
It comes from this kind of synergistic relationship that I'm hopefully building by moving my body.
Mm,
So, and it's interesting to me that at this time of my life, I'm still overwhelmed by certain things that have been held by my psyche and perhaps my body from the past, which causes overreactions in my fear response.
mhm.
And that's
Absolutely.
another journey again, then that requires I need seeing people perhaps sometimes, or journaling, or coming to terms with things, or just just sitting in quiet contemplation. I don't know what it is for everyone else, but all of those things work for me at different times.
Mm. Yeah, that connection or disconnection. I think so many of us, and again, I wonder if this is more gender based, the females are often conditioned to reject their own kind of physical needs, I guess. But my experience was also like I completely ignored my body completely, and I'm talking about food and basic needs like food or just general comfort and things like that. Like it took me a really long time. Like it never occurred to me that I actually could advocate for those needs. So like if I was in a social group situation or a work situation where you're in like a big office or like there's a lot of people around or some event or something like that, I completely abandoned my physical needs. So I would like not eat, not go to the bathroom, like literally just be there like a statue. No, I cannot inconvenience anybody else with my physical needs.
Mm.
Now, I think that's a bit extreme, but that's how I lived for a long time. But we were talking about awareness. I had no awareness of that. And then
Mm.
when I started like unmasking and like understanding that, and this came up as a recurring dream for many years as well, then I was able to make a connection back to my body. But a
Mm.
lot of us walk around like I, I work with a lot of people who've been through similar things who just imagine themselves as just a head on a body. The body's not
Mm.
really connected to their,
Mm.
and so yeah, I think it is important. We were talking about holistic and like bringing it all back, but there's challenges with that. We've always got things from the past, and so yeah, it's a lovely process, but it's fascinating actually to really dig down deep into like why do I feel that way about my body or about certain things, and yeah,
And what is this experience I'm having, in my body or in my mind? And what does it mean? And so many of us don't have enough information, I think. I think
yeah.
it's about finding that information, looking things up, seeing people who know about stuff, whatever it is. It's like, I think the fear response thrives in an environment of lack of information. That's what
Mm.
I think.
Yeah,
If it
that's
was some
true.
kind of equation that
Mm.
in your head, visualizing some equation, fear response equals inability to have any information or
Mm.
the unknown or whatever it might be. And it's like a cycle, isn't it? It's like the fear response feeds the inability to kind of have information or the unknown, and then the unknown feeds the fear, if that makes sense.
Mm.
So you're
Yeah.
in this spiral of like, I'm just fearful, I'm just fearful, I'm just fearful, and I don't know why, and I don't know, and I'm overwhelmed, and it's just
Yeah.
this cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. When everything, it is the overwhelm when everything happens all at once, so you can't make head nor tail of it.
Sounds very dramatic, but
Mm.
I think it forms a basis of a lot of things that are going on,
Mm.
both individually and collectively,
Yeah.
you know?
And I also find that some people focus on one overly rather than the other. So, like, sometimes people focus too much on the body at the sake of the the mental or the psychic stuff and the part that the inner psyche, I mean by that. And some people are the other way around and focus too much on the inner psyche but at expense of the body. So really it is finding the balance of bringing them both, and they're both important equally. And
Mm.
I certainly have not been perfect with that. I'm definitely much more of like, oh, ignore the body, have been in the past. So a lot of my work has been like, it does make me feel better when I go for a walk. I have to make the effort to do that and prioritize that as a need, because in turn, that actually does connect to my mental health or my inner psyche as well. But yeah, I find like some people, an extreme example of someone focusing too much on the body would
Mm.
be, like extreme sports, kind of like marathon,
Mm.
like, those like marathon runners that go for like days. And then, yeah, there's
It's not
always a
a, I'm,
polarity.
yeah, I'm not totally aware of that experience, not having been that type of person ever.
Mm,
But yeah,
yeah.
that's an interesting phenomenon in itself, I think.
Yeah, there's been
what
studies
that
on
actually is
the
about. Yeah.
yeah, it's a form of it. I'm not saying that everybody who does the ultra marathons. I'm talking about the ones that go over days for hundreds of miles or kilometers. There's been studies
Mm,
done on that, and it's like a pure form of avoidance, or like a lot of them have trauma, and it's their only, they're so disconnected and dissociated from their body. It's their
mm,
only way to push their body to the limit to feel something, because they
ah,
just can't feel anything normally. It has to
mm,
be in the extreme presentation. So that's, as I say, an extreme example, and
mm.
not something that we are really focusing on today.
Yeah. It's a very, very alive subject, I think, in the
Mm,
world as it stands now. And I recently came across something, maybe it was an article or something that said that really people's level of satisfaction, the happiness scale, was at an all-time low.
mm.
And I just,
Collectively, you mean? Do you mean like
yeah,
collectively, like
yeah.
as humans
Yeah,
on
they did
Earth?
some kind of
Yeah.
survey. I don't know of whether it was globally or country-wise. I don't remember exactly the details, but I was struck by this understanding that we're getting less and less satisfied or happy
Mm.
with life
Yeah,
generally.
I agree with that. I mean, you can sense it when, even when
Mm,
you're out and about, that you can sense
mm,
that the morale is at an all-time low. Like people, it's definitely getting harder to find the people who are truly excited about life and truly
mm,
connected with it, because there's just so many changes that have happened in such a short period of time, really,
mm.
for us all collectively, and that has an impact, a huge impact on how on our overall well-being.
Yeah, and change that sort of rapid change has an effect on our fear response too, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Because it's
absolutely.
a lot of it's unknown, the whole AI thing, we don't know. We haven't got information,
Hmm.
which feeds the fear. And
Yes.
so we're getting pulled in lots of directions. So when I think about that, I think about this whole idea that our attention, and they talk about this, that people want that the currency at the moment is our attention.
Hmm.
They want our attention. Our attention has got to be on what they want, what whoever is interested in this wants our attention for. Um, wouldn't it be an act of deep rebellion to have our attention on ourselves?
Yes. Well, yeah, because you ask the bigger question, why do they want our attention, is to put us into a fear response, to keep us in that fear response where we don't have access to that. So yeah, I think it is, um the counter to that is absolutely the connection with self and the disconnection from that messaging, to really try and understand if it's a created fear response, if it's a genuine fear response. It's
Yeah,
very,
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. That's a fantastic point that you make. That's a fantastic point that you make because there's sort of these kind of unnamed fears, and we're not always in a position to fully interrogate those in ourselves.
yeah, and it's a lot to ask of us all as individuals, to really deeply go into that on a very, very deep level. Like, when we're not used to that, we've got our roles in society, or in groups, or the families that we belong to, or the social networks that we belong to, and we can't all do the same thing, can we? Like, on a daily basis, it would expend too much energy. But at the same time, because of that same reason, we shouldn't be oblivious to it, and we should understand that there are times when we have to do that, because
Mm,
what's worked for us in the past isn't working for us anymore. So it is a
mm.
time for change, and it is a time to look at different things, or look a bit outside the box, or do your own kind of challenges, internal challenges. Um,
Which can be an overwhelming prospect.
well, it is. And as I said, like, if we're all so distracted and we've got genuine things that we have to do every day, it is very hard to go back into that space. And I understand why sometimes people don't want to, is because it does invoke fear. It creates fear, even if it's needed. And that's a difficult place to be. And so,
Very difficult place to be. So it's really like about well, what is it about? We don't know for each individual person. But is it about a small decision that for a minute I might just sit quietly and see how that feels as a first step? Doesn't, we've got a world full of information telling us how to do stuff. And
Mm.
that in and of itself can be distracting.
And I think we're all sick of it.
Sick
I
of
think
it.
to be,
Sick of it.
not that professional, but like I think we are so overloaded with information
Yes.
that we just cannot the thought of possibly trying to take in any more information is the
Yes.
absolute last thing we need.
That's it. That's
So
it. So is it about giving ourselves permission to, I don't know, to
to, I,
just
well, I think it's back to
feel
what you
ourselves for a second? I
well,
don't
yeah,
know.
I think it's back to your point that you just made a few minutes ago, is that for every person it will be different
Yeah.
because what you need in that moment is different for me. Like what I know I need, and it's a very clear need, is I need to speak with either one person or a small group of people, like 1 to 4 people, in a conversational way, in a safe way where we can bounce all of these ideas off. I need like a really high kind of like external processing type conversation about all the things to know that we're not, also to know that I'm not alone in thinking all of the things. Yeah, does that make sense?
That's
I
it.
like to like experiment
Yes.
with the thought. I like to externalize things, even if I don't believe them, to test them,
Yeah.
to see. And I like to find people who can reflect that back to me and have that kind of same conversation with me. So that's what I really need when I'm in a fear response, because the aloneness and the isolation just feeds the fear, I find. But I think some people that would make it worse. So I think that's why you have to, I think for some people that whole like, oh, the possibilities, even if they're bad possibilities, negative ones, would be more fearful. So that's why you've got to kind of find your right people. Some people might need to completely disconnect, or
Yes.
maybe go fully into the body and do something
Yes.
very somatic, maybe
Yes.
just dancing, or something
Yes.
like that, and completely switch off for it. So sometimes I need that too, but I definitely need to not avoid fear. I need to address it and externalize it, and I really need um, other people in my space to be able to do that. So
Yes.
I guess I'm just giving examples of how it could look different for everyone. But do you know
And
what that would look like for you?
for me, it's
Yeah.
been a bit, I've been on this sort of pathway for some time now. So for me, it depends.
Yeah.
It depends. Sometimes it's other people, trusted friends. Sometimes it's a good therapist.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's just being on my own,
Hmm.
finding nature, going for a swim, going for a
Mm.
walk. All of those things,
Mm.
all of those things have worked for me. The thing I'm aware of, though, is that not everyone's going to be aware of what they need to be aware of.
And
It's
yeah,
almost like,
exactly.
well,
Exactly.
what are
It's
the
hard.
indicators? There's a feeling, isn't there? There's a feeling that I'm not happy, or I'm not okay, or
Hmm.
I have some physical things coming up for myself, and I don't know what that is. I'm I'm not sleeping well. I'm not eating well.
Hmm.
This general malaise is the first indicator
Hmm. If
that
we,
that
yeah.
something is called for, and that is a meeting, a kind of a building of a relationship with oneself somehow.
Hmm. Yes, to understand what your kind of
I'm
like
being vague on
baseline
purpose
is.
because
Yeah.
it's so individual. This is the
Well,
thing.
yeah, and we can go into like if we're talking back to that, the polyvagal thing, there's always a polarity. I always talk about polarities and opposites because that's how energy works and how it's all exists. But there will be people who go into what you were saying, like the depression type states, the disconnection, the dissociation, the flatness, the apathy. But there's also the people who go into the the other one, which is like the fight, the aggression. Maybe that comes out as more road rage incidents or shouting at your family or something like that, because it still comes from fear. They don't know what the fear is yet because they haven't identified it, but it could come out as anger, rage, or it could come down as a full shutdown depression, staying in bed for a week. So it's not the
Yeah.
same for everybody. And I guess the important thing to understand is like, what is your baseline? Understanding your own baseline so that you know if you're off kilter in either one of those ends of the spectrum, or any of the middle bits in between.
Or it could just be this gradual understanding that there's more, or there's something more for me. It might not even be as dramatic as as any of those things, or it could be different degrees of all those things.
Well, that's what I was saying. It's on the spectrum. So those are the extremes
Mm,
of both ends, but everything in the middle is all the other degrees of that, because it could just be
mm,
a slight change, but
mm,
it reflects, I guess, the intensity of the fear underneath.
mm. So that's kind of pretty deep stuff, isn't it? That we've
Yeah.
just chatted about, and a bit kind of I'm aware that we got quite out there with it all.
Yeah, I
Um,
hope it made sense. I feel like it,
yeah.
I'm wondering if it
I
made
think
sense.
the takeaway is that, we live in this world that thrives on, well, thrives, probably not the right word. It's very prevalent that there's a dissatisfaction,
Mm.
to say the least,
A
and
collective
things, a
dissatisfaction.
collective dissatisfaction, and that people aren't as happy as they
Mm.
feel they want to be for
Yeah.
whatever reason. And that
Yeah.
there is things like road rage, there is things like stress
Mm.
and depression and anxiety and sleep problems and
Yeah.
physical
Oh,
ailments
yeah, the
that can't
physical
be named,
problems.
and all of those
Yeah.
things are existing more and more. So
Yeah.
at some point, maybe it's time for us to spend more time with ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, I think it always comes back to that, doesn't it? Awareness and understanding.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Sarita.
Thank you. Thank you. See you soon.
See you next time.